Welcome, friends. This is the Campus Ministry Today podcast, and it's sponsored by VIA Students. I'm Steve Shadrach, and I hope wherever you are listening or watching from, it's a beautiful day on your campus. There are groups and students and staff listening and watching all over the world, which is fun that we get to have such an international audience. Normally, I'm joined by my good friend and co-host Clayton Bullion, but Clayton couldn't be with us today. He is in Ethiopia, training 50 or so recent graduates from one of our sister ministries there. And EDM, you know what that is, probably evangelism, disciple making, missions, mobilization, not electronic dance music, sorry. So I'm flying solo today, but I am not alone. Of course, we have a very special guest joining us, one of my longtime friends. I'll be introducing in a moment. But this year, VIA, our ministry, is celebrating its 25th anniversary. Over the last 25 years, God has grown VIA from a small group of people with a burden for the Great Commission into a global family, serving workers, churches, ministries, and movements all around the world. We just had our staff family retreat in Estes Park, Colorado, just last week, and I think there were, including kids, over 300 people there. So it was quite a group, and it was a lot of fun. But our guest today has been part of that story since day one, and he is a longtime friend, a veteran VIA staffer named John Patton. He married well. His wife is Tisha. He'll mention her, I'm sure. But John, welcome to the podcast, brother. It's great to have you with us.
It's glad to be with you.
John, we have a lot to talk about today, but let's just begin with your story. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your history in collegiate ministry, and how in the world did you and I even become involved with each other, buddy?
Oh, it's a great story. So it started in Central Arkansas. During that time, got married to my amazing wife, Tisha, who's been in ministry even longer than I am. Definitely married up there. Talk to her about her in a second. I got 3 boys. One is finally a college student, so we're having some great conversations these days about his faith, about dating, about his career and growing up. And so a lot of good, crucial conversations there. And like you, many of us here on this podcast, Tish and I's life was transformed during our college days. Where I learned to share my faith, study the Bible, memorize scripture, learned to pray for the nations. And really, that started my freshman year. Got invited to a Bible study, and then later a summer project, the Kaleo Discipleship Summer Project.
Kaleo Summer Project.
Yeah. And that's kind of where God kind of started to change the trajectory of my life. I loved business growing up, working with my dad and his retail store and working in business stuff, and had several businesses going on. And that's kind of what I struggled with during college was, I wanted to emulate the people that were discipling me and be an evangelist on campus, a disciple maker. But I kind of realized that I kind of had a knack for kind of serving the campus ministry staff, kind of working behind the scenes. It's a summer project. The guy that was in charge of all the finances and logistics for the whole project, he needed to go raise support. So he said, "Hey, John, I think you can handle the business side of the project. Would you be willing to do that for me while I go raise my support?"
Wow.
And I said, "Sure." I'm not really sure what that's supposed to be about, but I'll jump into it, and started figuring it out. Did it accidentally the first summer, did it on purpose the second summer, raised a little bit more support to do that, and realized that kind of God can use business people too. And that was where I kind of found that I got to do the type of work that I love, which was, business, problem solving, thinking through different strategies along those areas, but do it for the cause that I love. So missions, the Great Commission, collegiate ministry. And so we jumped into an internship after those summer projects, and then eventually started working with you. That's where I met you my senior year.
Well, I am going to compliment you many times, I'm sure, during this podcast, but I was just telling someone about you, John, just a few moments ago, and I was calling you my brain. that I basically got to a point over the last 25 years of just doing whatever John Patton tells me to do, because you've so much organized our ministry and organized our lives in such amazing ways. But that campus you're talking about, I know you're going to talk about Tisha because she was on staff with STUMO, Student Mobilization, but a very unique campus that you came out of, bro. I think it was 1,100 students that had some Methodist roots to it in Conway,
We
Arkansas.
call it the Berkeley of the South. It was
The Berkeley of the South.
yeah, it wasn't there wasn't a whole lot of religion outside of our little college ministry there, and so I think it was definitely woke before woke was cool.
It was woke before woke was cool. That is a good description. Um, Carol and I, my wife, we started a ministry there on the campus of Hendrix College in 1990. And it was one of the greatest experiences of our lives those 4 years before we turned it over to a campus director, Charlie Lofton, who then became the actual full-time campus director there at Hendrix, because we were just on there a day or two a week. But man, some have I seen God do an amazing work, create a movement on a small campus like that transformed the campus. And leaders and missionaries and Christian workers and laborers were just pouring out of that place after a few years, like just about no campus I'd ever seen. Before we get to your wife, Tisha, John, how do you account for that? How do you account for this incredible movement on that Hendrix campus that just produced so much fruit?
I think in any kind of environment to where it's not comfortable to be a Christian, you're getting antagonized all the time by your professors. Our freshman, welcome week, it ended with a coming out week, where upperclassmen go around and put little fairies on doors of all the people they think need to be changing their sexual or gender identity. And so that was kind of the environment that we're stepping into in college. And so it's like here we are in the Bible Belt, and yet we're on this kind of microcosm of a campus that was extremely liberal. And so if you were going to be involved in ministry, you really had to want to and desire to, and you'd be willing to stand up to a lot of kind of the animosity and persecution on campus.
Yes.
And so I think through that refinement and through that diligence of having to really decide if this faith is really something you want to take seriously and something that you're willing to stand up for in class and with your other classmates.
Yes.
I think it was one of the smallest campuses that STUMO had at the time, but it was
Yes.
producing the most amount of staff.
Yes.
Missionaries STUMO had at the time.
Incredible. Yeah, I sensed the students loved us, but it was the faculty and especially the chaplains and the religion profs that I felt literally despised by. And I was reading the book of Acts in the evenings, and I was experiencing the book of Acts during the day, on that campus. The people loved the apostles, but it was the religious leaders that hated them, And so, but the more pressure they put on us, the more persecution they brought upon us, the movement just exploded. And, we think persecution is bad. I'm not so sure that's how God views it. And so anyway, you that are watching or listening, don't be despaired. Don't get despaired if you're experiencing persecution. God's trying to develop a movement on your campus, and he wants to use that opposition to highlight the glory of God, to highlight the beauty of Jesus Christ. And I remember one year, John, and we're going to get to these other topics, but I remember one year we said, Lord, we want Jesus Christ to be the issue on this campus. Every single student on this campus this year, we want them to make a decision to embrace him or to reject him. And bro, that was a year like none other. I was shocked. I was amazed because God answered that prayer. I'm telling you, 1,100 students, because we probably had 100 to 110 students in the movement there, and they were campus leaders. They weren't just extras. They were at the heart of that campus.
Well, thanks for pioneering on the campus and allowed me to step into a solid disciple-making ministry when I joined. So thank you.
Well, brother, I'll stop there. I could talk an hour about that experience that we had there, what we saw God do on that little campus. So if you're on a small or medium-sized campus, in some ways, God can do a greater, deeper, more expansive work in and through you on that campus than even one of these major SEC 30,000 schools, So don't think that God can't do some amazing work. Okay, John, brother, you mentioned your wife Tisha, your better half.
Definitely.
Those of us who know, both of you know that collegiate ministry has been a major part of your life together. And
Absolutely.
some might even say her passion for college students even runs deeper than yours, John. You wrote that statement, so I'm just quoting you, brother. But
Well,
tell
of
us
course.
about Tisha, her ministry background, the role she has played in y'all's calling together, if you would.
Yeah, so Tisha's been consistently discipling women for 30 years. I mean, she was on campus, and I was focused more on the admin and the operations. When we started marriage, I'm working kind of 8 to 5 with you there in the office, helping build Via in the early days while she was on campus still at Hendrix. And so she was, working those mornings, afternoons, and evenings in those large groups there on campus. And so we're trying to balance that, as our early days of the marriage. But then, lo and behold, we moved to India for kind of about 9 months into our marriage. And so now we're trying to figure out how to, leave and cleave. We definitely launched away from our parents, moved to India, started a family. And that's where, I was still working on the operations side of the ministry there in India while she was working with college students and leading the women's area. But then, a little bit after a year of that, we moved to Fayetteville where we wanted to start a family. And Tisha's still struggling with, she has a passion for discipling women, but now we've got young kids and having some newborns. And now she's moved away from campus. She's not plugged into the college of ministry like she was before.
Yeah.
So it's amazing what God did. Just kind of having one table at the back of New Heights Church there of advertising a college study for college girls. That began as something. Then later, Jess Aaron with the traveling team. And the two of them decided to join up. They got great complementary gifts. Jess is an incredible teacher. Tisha loves facilitating and asking great questions. And so the two of them together have been leading this Global Girls Women's Bible Study now for almost 17 years.
Wow.
They got about 30 girls a year that are in that. And it is self-sustaining. They recruit, the girls are recruiting other girls. They actually have a waiting list. They literally have a waiting list of girls that are applying to be part of that Bible study. And it's a leader study. They're going systematic theology. They're going through Fuel in the Flame.
Fuel in the Flame? They're going through Fuel in the Flame?
Yes. John. Both the old one and then now the new one.
Really? There's a new one out?
Yeah. And then they kind of rotate to doing some Discovery Bible study. They have World Prayer every time. And it's about 80% sorority girls, and they're coming after their chapter meetings. They're highly dedicated.
Wow.
And they set the bar early on. It says, amongst all of your other functions and activities, you've got to make this a priority. And it's going to be 2 to 3 hours on Monday nights. And by God's grace, it's just been a movement on campus ever since.
Sounds like we need to have her on a podcast, John.
Well, she's definitely more gifted than I am in many areas, so it'd be great.
Oh, for you that are watching or listening and you're single, please set the standard, the bar high as to who you marry. And make sure if I were you, I'd marry someone that's even more committed to Christ, even more committed to the Great Commission than you are. So out marry yourself, please. Don't just find the first warm body that comes along. You get a real solid warrior for Christ. Well, that's a great story about you and Tisha. Y'all have had a front row seat to much of Via's history. You're really a co-founder, John. You and I together, and really, we have a man named Brian Klotz that we want to include in that trio, really. But it's a great time to look backwards for a moment. Via, we're celebrating this 25th anniversary. I'm feeling old, bro. But some listeners may know Via students, but may not know the story behind the larger organization. So just briefly, take us back to the beginning. Why was Via started, and how did it come together? And what needs were we trying to address, John? You've got that in your brain much better than I do. Go for it.
Well, I'm basically telling your story because 25 years ago, you've been leading student mobilization, a great collegiate ministry, the one that impacted Tisha and I. But you were turning that over to kind of the next generation of leadership there, Dave Reiner.
Yes.
And you wanted to focus on what really attracted me to you as I was kind of considering, do I want to join STUMO staff, the traveling team, or VIA? You said you spent the first 25 years really developing and growing your own ministry, the one that God called you to and gave a burden on your heart. But you want to spend the next half of your life really focused on investing in others, of building up other ministries, helping them grow in their strengths and calling. We actually called the ministry, it wasn't Via 25 years ago, it's called the Bodybuilders.
The bodybuilders.
I definitely didn't have the muscles that you did, but Ephesians 4:12 says he gave some for the equipping of the saints, for the work of service, to the building up of the body of Christ. And so that's what we did. We tried to build up other ministries for the body of Christ, really focusing on helping them complete their most strategic role in completing the Great Commission.
John, didn't some people think we were like that group called the Power Team that ripped the phone books in half when they found out we were the bodybuilders? And
we did get a couple of those phone calls, yes.
We had one of those phone calls.
But kind of the three things that we always focused on is still what we do today. You know, back then we said the biggest need is laborers. Matthew 9:37, the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few.
Yes.
And so it was really kind of not just the need for laborers anywhere, but amongst the unreached, and kind of where are incredible amounts of unreached peoples, people that have never heard the name of Christ.
Yes.
And how do we get more laborers to those 8 places around the world, the 1040 window, or unreached people groups?
Yes.
So if that's the greatest need, we also talked about the greatest opportunity. Well, that's what you'd been given your passion in life to, was college students, because college students are still the most, recruitable, trainable, sendable people on the planet. That's the greatest opportunity, is raising up college students from the college campuses of the world to get involved in reaching these unreached peoples. And now we've definitely included multi-generational churches. You know, we kind of started off as more of a collegiate-focused ministry, equipping them, but now definitely multi-generational churches, those that have college students, young adults, young families growing within the church, older, wiser adults who have both wisdom as well as funds to help fund the missions movement that's coming out of their churches.
Right.
So if that was the biggest need, laborers, the biggest opportunity of college students, one of the biggest obstacles that we always addressed was support raising.
Yes.
You know, people that are wanting to get into ministry, and this is not just an issue here in the U.S., it's an issue globally.
All over the world. Yeah.
But you're wanting to step into this calling that God has for you, but how do you fund it? And how do you do it full time?
Show me the money, right?
Yeah. And so support raising is an area that we addressed early on with the support raising boot camp and later the God Ask, because that's the biggest fear and obstacle, and we're trying to overcome those areas. Our new executive director, Dave Rothgar, a man that you discipled and now handed off Via to, he talks about the mobilization cliff, that we can do a really great job of getting people excited about the Great Commission, excited about missions, but then we kind of come to the edge of a cliff. And if there's, we have these issues of support raising, these issues of finding an agency, these issues of learning how to, learn a different language. And so you're trying to figure out, what does it look like to get from here to there? Here you are, have this passion for the nations. But what does it look like to actually get to the mission field? And so that's what VIA is trying to address, not just here in the U.S., but worldwide.
So you're saying that cliff, they feel called maybe to missions or mobilization in some way, but it's a big gap. There's a big canyon down there, and they see the other side, but they can't see the bridge that connects it.
Yeah, and if you're a campus minister, you need to be thinking, how do you not just get people excited about the Great Commission, but how do you help lead them to there? How do you play that role of a connector? Kind of the reason I'm in mobilization is because I love problem solving and networking and connecting the dots. How can we get people from their want to the practical of how to? That's the reason why I've been working with you all these years, because I loved your vision, loved what God's trying to accomplish through you, and how can I connect the dots to get all the steps taken to effectuate this mission? And
in very practical ways, John, I appreciate scraping the Milky Way and talking about, the greatness of God and glory of God and all the great things that, the sermons and the philosophy of it. But what are the simple practical steps of getting there, and getting the right training and finding the right agency and raising all your support and all the practical, pragmatic details, those steps of getting people to the most strategic place they can possibly be in their life and on this planet. So you and I have tried to do stuff that create stuff over the years that's so simple, so basic, so reproducible for the body of Christ. And I think the Lord has used some of those things. Well, that original vision has grown significantly over the last 25 years, praise God. Most of our audience might be familiar with VIA students if you've been listening to this podcast, but our team is focused on inspiring, equipping, encouraging, and serving those that are doing evangelism and disciple making and missions mobilization all over the world. But our VIA students, especially among college and university students and the staff, the church-based and campus-based collegiate ministry staff. In fact, we're about to come out with a book called Ministry to Movement that's for you all that are listening or watching that fit that category. Fuel and the Flame was for students, but this Ministry to Movement book is for, those who are working with students. So anyway, I put in a little plug for that, John, but
There you go.
VIA is much broader than just VIA students. So maybe our audience might want to know, what else does VIA do besides students? What are the different, how are the different teams working together around the world to advance the Great Commission? John, what would you say?
Well, going back to VIA's mission there, our core mission is to mobilize the global church to send missionaries to the unreached. It's as simple as that. Trying to mobilize the body of Christ worldwide to the most strategic role in completing the Great Commission, but really sending missionaries to the unreached, helping plant churches amongst the unreached.
Yes.
We have about 200 staff in over 20 countries, Asia, Africa, Latin America, and the Middle East. But, we started 25 years ago as primarily a U.S. mobilization ministry.
Yes.
As we got involved in perspectives and our different mobilization efforts, I would say it's probably 80-20 the U.S. and the rest of the world. But about 10 years ago, one of the earliest guys you mobilized, probably 25, 26 years ago, he went to China. And he got there with a great ministry of Cru and realized Cru was doing an amazing job of reaching college students throughout China. That there were disciples being made, people being led to Christ, and yet they didn't yet have kind of that next step. They'd done a great job of handing over the reins for evangelism, disciple making, but the idea of kind of mission mobilization, about sending Chinese laborers to go to the unreached,
Yes.
really wasn't within their kind of main area of focus in ministry. So we has taken our resources, taken Explore Study, taking talks from the traveling team, the biblical basis of mission, translating those into Chinese and using those. Then soon, we invited him to come do that with us globally. And he said, I'm only willing to come join the ministry if we can really switch your focus. 80% from the U.S. to 20%, but can we start to move that in the opposite direction? Because he said, you mobilized me to go to the area that was most needed, the unreached. But he's realizing the mission field is becoming, in some ways, already is kind of the next great missions force.
The mission field is becoming the mission force. That's a cool phrase.
It is. And we even came up with a new term of a globalizer, kind of a mobilizer that went, a mobilizer that goes.
If you're a mobilizer and you cross a culture to go mobilize believers there, we can now call you a globalizer.
Yeah, I believe that was Casey's son who came up with that term. Trying to figure out what they were doing there. But so what does VIA do practically?
What does VIA do, bro?
Yeah, we're coming alongside these local churches, collegiate ministries, these national mission agencies, and helping them in their calling to reach the nations.
They're calling to reach the nations.
Yeah, because in many ways they're already living within the same proximate region.
Yes.
They might know the language already or similar language. Most of them already know 2 or 3 or 4 languages.
Yeah, really.
They understand the cultural cues, and their sending churches are literally sometimes just a couple of hours away to these unreached people areas.
Yes.
And so the idea of helping equip them and giving them the vision to really own missions to the unreached is so much more strategic than trying to send an Arkansan over to Sudan or Ethiopia or Myanmar. I'd rather send a Burmese within Burma or Myanmar than a guy from Arkansas. Or Ethiopian or Sudanese into Sudan or Somalia, maybe a guy from Arkansas or Texas.
Yep.
And so we used to try to do mobilization alone. We were doing mobilization through discipleship and through programs like Perspectives. But then we realized that we really need to get this DNA of the Great Commission missions into the local churches and the college ministries. And so that's kind of where we've been shifting over the past several years. We learn from our mistakes, and we're used to working in a very kind of individualistic culture here in the West. But there's a lot more kind of group culture and community.
Yep.
And there's a lot more kind of authority structures within other parts of the world. And so they respect their elders, and they respect the power of the pastor in the local church. And so we realize we need to come alongside them and help work to bring missions as part of their DNA. This evangelism, disciple making, and mission mobilization, EDM that you talk about so much. How do we infuse this within their local ministries? And so now our field teams around the world are doing that. They're walking alongside these national ministries. And then we do have these teams like VIA Students as part of our global equipping teams. And so we have that for students, for families, churches, and generosity, the support raising one. And so they're coming up with the tools and the resources and trainings in dozens of languages now, and then giving that to our teams and partners so they can lead these areas for mobilization, disciple making, and support raising within these indigenous ministries.
Wow, bro, that's quite an explanation. I'm hosting two couples right now that are from Indonesia. A couple of them are in my office right now, listening to me, drone on here in this podcast. But they are Indonesians, and they know the languages and the culture and the people. And so they are mobilizing believers, all through Indonesia. The largest Muslim country in the world, is becoming one of the greatest sending nations in the world. And it's not because Americans are leading the way. We're sitting in the back seat, just helping, encouraging, resourcing, training, and they're leading the way. And so that's something that we have to get into our minds, that if you're an American today, praise God. I'm sure you love your country, but we have to understand maybe currently what is a big chunk of what our role in the Great Commission is today, is to sit in the back seat and say to all these great countries out there, you must increase, we must decrease. Your role in the Great Commission has to be on the front lines, because you're right there near those unreached. You understand the people, the culture, the language, you look like them. It's so many similarities. And so if we can humble ourselves, John, and let them lead out, I think that's one of the keys to fulfill the Great Commission. But anyway, I didn't mean to give my sermonette on that, bro. But John, you recently have stepped into a new role with VIA, and you've been the operations guy forever. But now you're the USA regional director, and you're helping develop a whole new team. Maybe we can recruit some team members from this podcast, brother. But tell us about your new role and the team you are leading. What is this team being built to do, and why is this work so relevant to the campus ministry leaders, even watching or listening today? Briefly fill us in on what that means for here in the United States.
Yeah, many of the people on the podcast, right now you're using one of the resources that VIA develops, this VIA Students podcast. Many of y'all have used the Fuel and the Flame, or some of the discipleship resources, or support raising resources like the God Ask or the Boot Camp. But so the U.S. region is really twofold. We're definitely trying to help the ministries that are here within the U.S., helping them do what they're trying to do, lead students to Christ, make disciples, launch them into the nations. But I'm also trying to play that role of a connector, trying to help be a bridge from U.S. ministries here that are strong in E and D and M, and how do we connect you with indigenous ministries around the world, so you can bring that culture and DNA and training into them. There's so many great ministries around the world that are doing great stuff. But just as you have, an out-of-town speaker come speak on your campus, you probably know what they're going to say. You've probably said it before to them. But if you bring someone in from the outside, they're the expert. And definitely there is, there's excitement of bringing an American over to a college ministry in Jordan or Ethiopia or Kenya or Indonesia.
Yeah.
Why are you here? But to come with them as a learner about their culture, but also to come there as an assistant and encourager. And so, Americans are sometimes, we're brash, we're foolish, we're bold, and sometimes they need that. And so these campus ministry leaders are inviting American college students and staff. So would you come over and help us jump into evangelism to these Hindus or these Muslims or these Buddhists? They're kind of timid, and it's hard sharing your faith in any culture. But definitely when you're a minority culture and the majority culture is Muslim or Hindu or Buddhist, that can have a lot more fear of persecution.
Yes.
So sometimes they would like to use Americans to help, use our ignorance and our boldness to help them jump into some great gospel sharing and spiritual conversations.
Yes.
So we've got opportunities now because we've been working with these college ministries and churches around the world. They're now inviting us, say, hey, bring some other campus ministry leaders, bring some of their staff, bring some of their students, and partner with us. We could continue to send college ministry people on mission trips to just so broadly and share the gospel to strangers. But just think if you could come alongside an existing collegiate church or college ministry there in Jordan or Indonesia, and now your students are working alongside these Indonesian and Jordanian students. You're going through some of the same discipleship resources together. You're learning how to share your faith with Muslims or Hindus together.
Yeah.
And now you're going to go out and have those spiritual conversations, maybe a different part of town than those students normally live in, but now you're going in to have tea and coffee with these other Muslims and Hindus and starting to have these spiritual conversations. And so now we can do ministry alongside people that are there for the long term.
Yes.
And really helping them embrace cross-cultural evangelism to these other Muslims and Hindus in their midst. And so that's my challenge for many of you today, just to reach out to us at VIA. If you want to consider both doing that with your students or your staff to partner with some other college ministries worldwide, or even do that, we are looking to grow our team. What would it look like? Many of you have been doing college ministry for years here in the U.S., and maybe that's where God has you for perpetuity. That's great. But if you feel that God might be calling you to now pass on the experience, the things that you've learned, and now multiply yourself in a new country and a new culture, that can be a great opportunity. Both with college ministries, within churches, mission agencies. I mean, we're trying to have some that are coming to do this with people kind of on a short-term basis, coming with our teams that already live in the region. And definitely some that are willing to go be that mobilizer, be
mobilizers.
that EDM consultant. You could be a consultant with these other college ministries. I mean, Clayton is over there in Ethiopia right now, bringing some of our tools and resources into some great college ministries there in Ethiopia. In many ways, these Ethiopians, they're incredibly committed to the gospel. They're incredibly passionate.
Incredible.
And now they're doing a summer training program with these 50 recent graduates. And I think 10 or 12 of them are going to be full-time evangelists and church planters throughout Ethiopia this next year. And the other 40 are going to be committed to pray and mobilizing more people to them. And so they've been doing this for years and years now in Ethiopia. And it's just an amazing thing of how they're mobilizing young college graduates to now be reaching out and pioneering new mission efforts there in East Africa.
Well, you're kind of describing a different perspective of short-term missions. Most of the time when we send the short-term missions team, it's kind of all about us, what we're going to do, what our experience is. Us Americans, we get off the plane and we've never been in that country, but we think we're in charge. Well, why would I think I'm in charge? Well, because I'm an American, and I'm an educated American, and I'm a sharp, educated American. I just think those people can see the arrogance just dripping off of us. Are we there for our benefit? Are we there to truly serve them and what their vision is? That's just a different way to look at short-term missions. Well, John, there are people listening who deeply love college students and college ministry. They may have spent years serving on campus, but they also sense that God could be leading them into a slightly different assignment. They don't want to walk away from the Great Commission or from their passion for developing young leaders. They may simply be wondering what could be next. So, just very briefly, you've already touched on this, but you might have another comment before we get to some of our final closing comments. But what type of people, experiences, and gifts will be valuable on this team that you're seeking to build across the United States here?
Well, most of the people probably listening to this podcast are campus ministers, either on a church or parachurch ministry staff. And so if you've been doing that for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, you've got an amazing experience and opportunity now to take what you've learned and done, probably several years as a student, and then now several years as a staff, and come alongside other African, Asian, Latino, Arab campus ministry leaders or college ministry workers, and be a coach to them and kind of help equip and encourage them within their collegiate ministries there around the world. Or if you've got 10, 15, 20 years of experience, you can multiply your impact on a whole nation, being more of a consultant to these ministries.
Yeah.
We've got the relationships. We just need experienced ministers that have been doing this for years or for a lifetime.
If you have a little bit of gray hair, that goes a long way in Asia, doesn't it?
It does. It's amazing. You might be losing touch with the college students on your campus, but you could be amazingly respected elder now in different college ministries around the world. Not just with the staff, but even with the students.
Of course.
I know you've experienced that in many of your trips throughout Asia.
Yeah, if I'd really thought ahead, we tend to really esteem youth here in America, but overseas they esteem, age. I should have lived the first half of my life in America, John, and the second half of my life in Asia. See, I could have kind of been esteemed on both sides of the ledger there, but I didn't think ahead, bro. Okay, last question, John. Here it is. It's August. Students are moving back on campus. I'm excited on one hand, but I'm just terrified on the other. Why is this season so important in the lives of college ministry? What would you say?
28 years ago, I was graduating senior, about to launch to college, and my cousin reached out to me, and she knew somebody from her church background was leading the Bible studies at the Hendrix College campus. She tried to make that connection. And I met him, didn't really remember his name, but that freshman move-in week, the orientation week, Stumo and that college ministry showed up, helped move all the freshmen into their dorms. They were kind of working alongside me and my dad, kind of carrying the entertainment unit, the refrigerators up into that second floor college dorm room there.
Were these students or staff or both?
Both. Students and staff there.
Okay.
And so if you're a college ministry leader right now, you need to be thinking, one, how do you activate all of your current freshmen, sophomores, juniors, seniors? How can they be engaging with people from their towns or their family members that are stepping on campus right now?
That first day, that move-in day, especially.
Yeah, but one, inviting people early on, but planning for this freshman move-in week is huge, because that is the first 3 weeks on campus is when people are trying to find their identity, find their clique and their group to connect in.
The battle to belong.
Yeah, and so just pursue these freshmen these first couple of weeks, called the Back to Campus Week. Every fraternity, every sports team, every college does it within their own people. And so we need to be competing at that level. How do we engage these college students and build these relational connections with them early on and bringing them to a more Christ-centered community? Otherwise, they're going to make some major mistakes. They're going to go from a very sheltered lifestyle in many ways, and they're just going to go off the deep end those first couple of weeks.
So, John, you were on the Hendrix campus. You were a brand new freshman. And I guess they helped you move in, but then they invited you to their weekly meeting. What happened next there?
Well, yes, they invited me to a weekly meeting. They engaged. I found out my RA down the hall. He was that campus staffer that I met that ended up, raising support full time to go into Stumo staff. It was my RA, Kevin.
He was as an undergraduate. He was your RA on your dorm floor.
He was. He decided to be an RA. Because that gave him great access and relationship to a lot of freshmen, a lot of students.
Oh, yeah.
I remember he used to have a fridge full of IBC root beer that I think he and his parents invested in, because that was that was a way for students to come in, grab a free IBC root beer, and have some great conversations.
Wow.
Invited me into Bible study. Invited me
IBC
to
evangelism. I like it.
Yep. I remember during my junior and senior year, my dad bought me and several other students cases of IBC root beer from Sam's, so that we could use that as a way to get more and more students into our
Well, that's a
rooms
classic, bro.
and
That's
have
a
great
classic.
relationships.
And he discipled you and mentored you for many years, didn't he? Well, the idea is to pursue those freshmen coming up here in August, an intentional outreach to those freshmen. Even start now, these summer projects, that final week in those summer projects, John, they call them back to campus. And the whole focus is now let's be praying and strategizing and planning together how we're going to get back to that campus in the first few days, the first few weeks, and really engage those freshmen relationally and of course, with the faith. And those freshmen are looking mainly for friends and where they fit in and the groups they're going to associate with. That's what there's on their mind more than, have they come to Christ. But to engage them and involve them and make them feel a part is a great bridge to the gospel. You've seen that many times, so have I. This has been good, John. You've shared so many powerful stuff, with us today, and your story and helping us celebrate these 25 years of VIA. Could we do this again in 25 years, John? Maybe you and I do a podcast on the 50th
anniversary there.
I may have to roll me in on a roller and put my teeth in or something for me to be able to talk with you at that stage of my life, John. But you have given us a clear picture of where God may be leading VIA in the years to come. We want to serve every person that's watching or listening, the church or the ministry, whatever you're doing. We want to help you fulfill the Great Commission. And so thank you for your many years, bro, for you and Tisha. You've invested in so many lives, especially college students and ministry leaders and the Great Commission. So we're grateful for you guys. Well, friends, this has been good. We'll put some information in the show notes about VIA, about John's new team he's building here in the U.S. and ways you can learn more, begin a conversation, maybe even about serving with VIA. We don't have commercials very often about that, so thanks for letting us slip that in. But we do hope you've enjoyed this episode of Campus Ministry today, and be sure to subscribe to the podcast and visit viastudents.org. It's got tons of tools to help you be more equipped and encouraged and inspired as you labor among the most strategic mission field in the world, in our opinion, the university campus. So until next time, God bless.